William here. What are we doing today? Well, we're looking at Unit 15, Organising, Controlling and Monitoring Supplies of Materials in the Workplace. It's beginning with a credit value of 8, which makes it one of the smaller units. And let's see how many learning outcomes there are. There are 7 learning outcomes, but they're all minor ones. So, tip of the day. Do we treat our suppliers, as construction managers, do we treat our suppliers as stakeholders? Well, as construction managers, we need to ensure that all stakeholders, that's anybody that has an interest in the project, benefits and prospers. So as construction managers, we need to treat our suppliers as stakeholders. We need to enable them to prosper also. For that to happen, we need to be organised. And if we do this, we will win the loyalty and cooperation of our suppliers. So let's move into the unit overview. Generally there are 3 resources if we're not including time, and those resources that we use on a construction site are plant, labour and materials, and all 3 are managed in a similar fashion. But all 3 are needed to programme, or production will stagger or come to a stop. This unit focuses on materials. So, as a site manager, we need to be aware of lead times and delivery restrictions. We need to be in communication with our suppliers regularly and not just 48 hours prior to wanting something delivered. For product evidence for this unit, I could suggest an email trail for arranging supplies of materials of a specialist nature in a difficult or complex situation. That record would be almost everything that you would need to evidence this unit. Alternatively, I have included other suggestions, and as I go through each of the learning outcomes, I shall mention or give suggestions of possible product evidences that you could use. Having mentioned learning outcomes, let's move into those straight away. Learning outcome. What is a learning outcome? Well, you're probably aware now. It is something you should know if you're being taught, or be able to evidence if you're being assessed. So the learning outcomes to this unit, which is organising, controlling and monitoring supplies of materials in the workplace. The first learning outcome is analyse operational plans and quantities to assess what supplies of materials will be required, and calculate and develop a delivery schedule. Product information, that is what you do or what you have done in the past, could be a copy of a bill of quants, a works programme or a material schedule. Number 2, identify opportunities to standardise supplies of materials. You could use an email records or project planning meeting minutes. This is something that's usually undertaken at the planning, during part of the planning process for a project. Number 3, check the delivery schedule and users to confirm what supplies of materials are needed and ensure appropriate orders are prepared. So what we could use here is a report of a material audits, email trails, or a completed delivery schedule. Of course, I always say my product evidences are just suggestions, and you may well have something completely unique in the companies that you work for which will suffice more than adequately. Please feel free to use your own evidences or your own ideas. Number 4, conduct negotiations and meetings with suppliers and users so that goodwill and trust is maintained and agreed supply requirements are ensured. Well, goodwill and trust are maintained and agreed because how a construction manager does that is they do what they say they're going to do. They keep everybody well informed and hold good communication in advance of something coming to light. So what type of product evidences could you use here? Supplier meeting minutes, material audits, supplier contract, client or contractor meeting minutes. So there we have both supplier and users included in the evidence. Number 5. Implement systems to monitor the delivery schedule and performance of suppliers, which will identify supply improvements. Again, material schedules, monitoring deliveries, stock take with work achieved against material used, that's production audit, perhaps an example of a contract with payment terms, even with a record of discount which you've won through negotiations. And of course, after a project has been completed, there are those forms which site managers have to complete, which prepare the way for better supply arrangements in the future. And those forms I'm talking about are post-project supplier assessments. And in those assessments, a good construction manager would also put in his recommendations and also mention any problems that he may have had with that supplier. Which moves us very nicely on to the learning outcome number 6. Identify problems with supply, record them and take action to resolve them. So good evidences that you could use here would be site, planning, client or project meeting minutes, schedules, delivery records and email correspondence records. And the last learning outcome in this unit is number 7. Identify changes likely to result in over or under supply and modify the delivery schedule to minimise disruption to the programme. Here we have audits, reports, supplier meeting minutes, progress, production meeting minutes. Anything of that ilk would suffice. Now that covers the product, what you do, evidences. When you listen to the audio podcasts, please match the product evidences that you are supplying to your candidate statements. The audio podcasts in this series will give you very good guidance on what and how to write and what to include in your candidate statements.